The Triple M Footy News Update
This is massive, this story. Got a little exclusive.
with Tom Browne.
Yes, that's right. We are back for another edition of Triple M Footy's News Update. My name is Tom Beers, filling in once again for Rudy. He'll be back next week. And as ever, I'm joined by Tommy Browne. Welcome back, Tommy.
Good morning, Tommy. Just got back from Waverley. It's my second trip out to Waverley this week.
Plenty going on out there, obviously. We'll get to that a little bit later. But the most pressing thing this morning, it's just been confirmed that 44 new cases in Sydney, which is a real worry. What are the implications for the AFL with that going on?
So Gil McLachlan, in good faith, gave the players a 21-day assurance they wouldn't be away from home for more than 3 weeks. The Sydney and the Giants will tick over 3 weeks on Tuesday.
Yep.
It's going to be impossible now for them to get back into Sydney next week, A, because of the COVID risk, particularly with the Delta strain, B, because it's not a great look flying teams for the AFL in and out of red zones, and C, they couldn't get out. Now, if they could get out, even then they'd be dirty, in inverted commas, in the eyes of some of the state governments, probably Victoria too. For 14 days, they couldn't play anyone. So I think for the season to keep going, which is what everyone wants to happen, Sydney and the Giants can't get back next week. Now, I spoke to the Players Association sources yesterday. They said they were starting to explore whether families could come down, but this is the difficulty in development this morning. Given Sydney's now in lockdown, everyone's been told to stay at home. In fact, I think the Premier's speaking as we speak.
Yep.
It's not easy to get families, and I don't believe the AFL can get those families out of Sydney.
Because they'd need a quarantine,
permission.
wouldn't they? Yeah.
Well, they'd need to quarantine. Plus, I don't think you're allowed to leave Sydney at the moment.
Right. Okay.
So there's two issues there. So the players are going to, and the officials, unfortunately, to keep things going, at this stage, hopefully it gets better, but at this stage, we'll just have to keep playing outside Sydney. And that's obviously going to be mentally challenging for a lot of players, particularly guys, as I can understand, with young families. It wouldn't be very nice, but it's unfortunately the situation we find ourselves in.
Well, they've been trying to avoid the H word, hubs, for as long as they can, but it now looks inevitable that they're going to be here for a long time now.
In all fairness to the AFL, and no one predicted this,
Oh,
with
no,
the
you
lockdown
can't.
in Sydney,
Yeah.
44
It seems a
cases
long way
today.
away for being reopened again, doesn't it?
That's
It's just
shocking.
going the wrong way. So,
Correct.
unfortunately, that's the way it's going to have to be. I think moving along, last night the D's had a big win over Port Adelaide. They got a good scalp on the road.
Yeah, 31 points for the Demons. It keeps them certainly in the top four. They were threatening to go out of the top four to fifth at the end of this round.
Big
They've been
8-point game, as
out,
they say.
It was an 8-point game, an old-fashioned
That's it.
8-point game. It was sort of like a final.
Yeah, a little bit.
And but it did have implications for Melbourne. They were fine defensively, but they had problems scoring, so they brought Browne back. They kicked well over 10 goals last night. Ben Browne had 10 disposals. I thought significantly frees up McDonald and Fritsch because he takes the best defender. And
He takes the biggest defender, most importantly.
Correct. Zach Butters, from a Port point of view, looks like he's twisted or injured his knee. They'll no doubt have scans on that today. The broader discussion for Port is that Adelaide this season has beaten now more teams in the top 8 than Port Adelaide. Port Adelaide has beaten just one team in the top 8.
That's fascinating.
Ken Hinckley's got 2.5 years to go on his contract. There's no problems there. But there is some focus on Hinckley and his ability this morning to get the most out of some of their best players and to beat these top 4 sides, because Hinckley's there with a specific, not promise, but guidance around a premiership. They're aiming to win one in the next couple of years. And at the moment, just for the moment, it looks like they're a little way off the top 4 sides.
And they seem to have a pretty good list at the moment, Port, as well. Like they're
That's the
fairly
argument.
well balanced. They may be lacking another key back, but their midfield's as good as it gets. Their forward line with Dixon and Co up there, they're looking
So
quite
Marshall,
dangerous, but-
Georgiades, Dixon, there's a few guys,
Yeah,
both that
Fantasia
aren't
needs to come back in.
standing up on some of these big games.
Robbie Gray might be proving to be a big out for him as well, but
Definitely.
he's a star. We touched on it earlier, but you were out at Waverley today for Clarko's presser. Any takeouts from that?
Yeah, the takeout was that Clarko at the moment seems to have absolute conviction that he's still the coach. He will be the coach of Hawthorn throughout the duration of his contract until the end of next year.
Yep.
And he sees this as an important period, whilst they won't get, to use the Hawthorn term, silverware during the period, very unlikely. He thinks that he can put 20, 30 games into these young guys, and he's got full conviction about being there. He was asked, what happens if Graham Wright, Ralphie asked him, what happens if Graham Wright gave you a call? And so I've given you a pretty clear answer. You can ask it in different shapes or forms all day. He had absolute conviction, as did his manager, James Henderson, who I contacted yesterday and gave me a quote saying that Alistair will honour his contract with Hawthorn. That's what he wants to do, and that's what Hawthorn have asked him to do. Now, I know Peter Sidwell said the same thing about Mick Malthouse carrying out the succession plan at Collingwood at various times when he was asked. this situation could be fluid. I know, and I've reported that Luke Sayers, the incoming Carlton president, is a big fan of Clarkson. Some people tell me they've even got a bit of a friendship, a relationship, and he's been keen on him all year. So I think Eddie reported on Footy Classified, Eddie Maguire, that clearly Clarkson's availability might now factor into Carlton's review. So there's a lot to play out, but at least for the moment, Clarko seems to have full conviction in their plans and seems energetic, and did flag this morning that perhaps at the end of next year he might step away from football or might do a job overseas. He's got a lot of different options, and he's a man of enormous conviction, and he's very, very stubborn by his own admission.
Absolutely.
So if there's anyone that's going to do it, he will. Having said that, I wouldn't discount it just yet. There's no doubt that the Collingwood board, trying to effectively save themselves, might go after Clarkson, and who could blame them? And I think Carlton will, at least informally, at some point too.
Yes, well, plenty to play out there.
Just on the Hawks, Mitch Lewis, who I keep talking about on this podcast, is free now from his concussion symptoms and will play VFL this weekend. Now, they don't have a VFL game. They do have a scratch match, the Hawks VFL side on Sunday, and Mitch Lewis is due to play in that, which is good news. We still haven't heard the outcome of the AFL investigation.
It's gone a bit quiet, hasn't it?
It's gone quiet.
They trying to just kind of sweep
I
this
think
under
it's
the rug?
concluded.
Or?
And what do you do with these types of things when you want to conclude an investigation, Tommy? At about sort of 11:06 tonight, just pre-game, it'll just come out on the email. So
well, you would have thought if they wanted to hide it, they could release it this week with all the Clarko and Mitchell chat going on.
True. Maybe they're negotiating or dotting some I's and crossing some T's.
Yeah, no doubt they're quite calculated down at Hawthorn, so they'll have a plan, that's for sure. Bit of selection news. The teams obviously drop on Thursday night, or the extended squads do at least. A little bit of movement out of Geelong.
Yeah, but I'll start with the Bulldogs. Jamarra Ugle-Hagan making his debut. That's great news. He's just been getting ready all the year. The Bulldogs have been patient, so he comes in for...
Well handled by... in for Aaron Norton, but well handled by the Bulldogs.
Called his mum.
Yeah.
Got video of that.
Got that. They did like a little teaser video of him putting his Guernsey in his locker and that kind of stuff. It was
and he rubbed his trade talk too, did the old, I'm not going anywhere. Of course, it's up to him.
Yeah, that's right. He called it out. Well, that's good. It's raw. It adds a bit of personality to him, so that was good.
But coming back to your point on Geelong, now Joel Selwood's been rested. I'm not sure if he's banged up or just needs a bit of a rest. I mean, he is a magnificent player in contract talks for next year. There's no issues there, but I think he's
naturally banged up.
Correct.
Just the way he plays is as tough
Sean
as
Higgins is back in. Jeremy Cameron out, obviously, with his hamstring injury. Luke Delhouse managed. And Quinton Narkle out after 18 touches.
That's an interesting one.
I've spoken to Ralph Carr, his manager, about this in recent weeks. Very loyal towards the Cats, but if he can't get a consistent game, they'll put him on.
He'd have to be in demand as well. Because they'd probably get something decent for Quinton Narkle. Whenever he comes in, he does a good job, and he might be one of those guys with a bit of extra opportunity that he could flourish. He does a
competent job, but Chris Scott obviously expects more. But sometimes it's hard just to step back into the side after being dropped.
Yeah, well, maybe they're demanding something of his role that he's not fulfilling. So potentially,
I didn't think he had a massive impact on the game last week.
They might want more defensive pressure from him. Who knows? They'll know internally what they want, and I'm sure they've got a reason for it. But Geelong fans are pulling their hair out, going, "We play this kid. He's a star." So
is that underestimating the Blues? We'll find out on Sunday, I guess.
Yeah, possibly. They're taking it a little bit. This is probably as weak as Geelong have been for quite a while, taking those names out. So could be a bit of a danger game for the Cats.
Taylor Walker not playing, not over his neck injury.
Yes.
He's okay from a health perspective, but not okay in terms of playing this week.
And he said, of course, on Triple M Adelaide earlier this week that he was going to do everything in his powers to try and get up for a Friday night game because they're the ones you want to play in front of the country.
That's what players always say.
But he must be in strife if he's missing, because he would have done everything to play. There's hardly an episode of this that goes by where we don't touch on Collingwood.
I've been going easy lately, Tommy. Just easing back on the Collingwood stuff. I like to stay out of it by, I sort of just keep it a distance. They are due the Collingwood management to give the petition of members, the members list over to the petition people today. And there's a sort of if you don't do that, you're sort of in breach of the Corporations Act, and it's been dragging on for a while. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that by 5 o'clock today.
Yes, well, it's it's all happening down at the Pies, that is for sure. I think that'll just about do us for today. Anything else before we go? Or?
No, it's going to be a very, very interesting weekend.
Big weekend of footy. A lot of big games coming up. So
a lot of focus on Carlton tomorrow against the Cats and how they travel.
And obviously all eyes on Jamarra in his first game against the Swans at Marvel.
I think he's one of those players that the AFL standard will suit.
Yep.
And he doesn't sort of shine in the VFL. He hasn't got a big body.
Yeah. Big stage, you reckon, might bring the best out of him?
Oh, just the style of play too.
Yeah,
you'll get better delivery, and I think you'll go well.
Very good. All right, well, that's been another big episode. Plenty to go through there. We'll be back early next week to wrap up all of the weekend's action. Stay tuned to Triple M Footy socials for all your latest this weekend, and we'll catch you then.
Thanks, Tommy.